I grew up in the Denison, Texas area, and we moved into Denison in 1955. And my dad came over as a science teacher at McDaniel Junior High School, and he had been teaching there for several years. And we always enjoyed Denison. It was a place where I graduated from high school in 1965. My wife graduated from Denison High School in 1966. And we went on, we played football. I played football at Denison High School. I was a tight end and linebacker. And I went on to Southeastern Oklahoma and played football, tight end there with my brother. My brother was a senior and I was a freshman. We both started on offense. So we really had a good time in this area. A lot of good friends. Bynum Thompson was a teammate of mine that went on to Southeastern and played with us. My brother was there playing. Several kids from Denison were on that ball team from Southeastern. And we just really had a good time. I was able to coach there my senior year at Southeastern, and really had some good help from Coach Bob Thomas and the people that were associated with Coach Thomas, Dr. Christian also. And we had a good background in football, a great background in education. I started coaching in Athens, Texas, and went on from there to some head coaching jobs, and later ended up in West Texas. And I was at Odessa High School. I was a grade level principal at Odessa High School. Moved to McCamey as the principal, and then later became the superintendent at McCamey, Texas. Had a good time, a great career. I've done just about every phase in education, enjoyed it. My wife also is a retired school librarian. And she was in charge of 3 different libraries there in our school district, and I was real proud of her efforts. She is still an excellent librarian. My brother is a retired school superintendent. My sister is still teaching music. So we have a great background in education, and very proud of it. Just as my dad. My dad was in education for 40 years, and he was in administration and taught physical science at Denison for almost 30 years. So we were all proud of what our dad did in the education that he had. I go back to the time that we moved into Denison, and my dad, we had a one provider home, and Dad was the school teacher, but he had to have a second job to keep myself and my brother and 2 sisters, fed at the table. So he found a second job at Theakston's. And after school, he would come in, and he would change clothes and get something to eat. Then he would go on down to Theakston's, and where he would help with that process of making hulls for the Yellow Jacket Boat Company. And some of the times that I remember, of course, I'm remembering through the eyes of a 9 and 10-year-old, that he would let me go with him to Theakston's, and I would help him put together these bags, rubber bags, that were very heavy in nature, and he would glue them together and repair holes as they occurred, and they would surround these big bladders around these hulls, and they stapled them, had a gluing process that held those things together, and then they would put them in it was a big circular type tank, and it was an oven, and they would get several boats in that oven at one time and increase the heat. And I know they had a process of increasing the pressure where it would sit there and set that plyboard, that mahogany, set those layers up on those boats. Had a distinctive smell, as I can remember. The glue was, it was, as my dad was putting them together, I can remember the smell of the glue. It was pretty heavy, and we wanted to be kind of careful around that as we were growing up. But he enjoyed that process of watching those boats being made, and I understand they made several hundred, could have been several thousand of those hulls at that time. This was in 1955, 1956 era. He worked with Theakston's probably until 1961. I think that's about time that Theakston's, the fiberglass and all came in, and then he was having some difficulty selling the wooden ones. But they were beautiful hulls. I can remember I can remember the mahogany would come in already made in the boards, the lengths, but they would ship them in old cuts of mahogany, and the mahogany boards were probably an inch thick, 3/4 of an inch thick anyway. It could be in different lengths. We actually they just threw up scraps at that time. We actually made a barn for some of our cows out of that mahogany wood that they shipped the plyboard in, the plies in. So I can remember the plyboard on, not the plyboard, but the mahogany boards on the barn that we'd have for our cows. Actually made two sections on the barns with that mahogany wood. They were pretty good. It was a pretty good looking barn down there for our cows. But really the mahogany I'm impressed with it. It had such a deep glow to it, and when they got the hulls made, they were beautiful when they put the paint and all on them, and the Yellow Jacket boat signs, insignia on the back, and it was really, really impressive looking machine. I also remember, I don't know exactly what year it was. It was in the 50s when Roy Rogers became part in association with the Yellow Jacket boats, and he came into Denison and opened a new plant. And boy, I was so excited to be there and see Roy Rogers. He was just a childhood hero. And we really enjoyed seeing him and hearing him talk and visit with us, and actually got to shake his hand as he met the crowd. And we enjoyed that part of the Yellow Jacket boats and the Theakston process. Mr. Theakston was a good man, and he worked hard. I remember in particular two of his helpers that he brought in from Nova Scotia. I don't remember their last names, but it was Billy and Ray, and they were more like their superintendents of the plant. And I really remember Billy because he had a 1956 Golden Hawk Studebaker, and that Studebaker was one fast little vehicle. We loved to get in the car with him and make the roads up around Lake Texoma there. But this reminds me of Lake Texoma quite a bit. But in 1957, this is when the spillway ran over. We had a lot of rain that year, and we watched the water as it came up, and we were told, and a lot of the Corps of Engineer people put out, that this would never happen, that the spillway would never run over. If it would, it'd be only once in 100 years. Well, here it was, 1957, not much more than 10 years after the lake was in place. We lived out where we could see the lake, and we saw the water coming up on the spillway, and then we saw it when it went over. And it came over in the next few days with such volume. I think at one point the water was like 4 feet over the spillway, and it washed out all the Shawnee Creek draw and around and all the way back down to Red River. And the river it looked like it was a mile wide at that time. As a 10-year-old, as I remember this, it looked like a mile wide. I'm sure it wasn't. But the water and the volume came through there, unbelievable. After the water went down, it washed out the bridge that was over Shawnee Creek. And my dad was working at Theakston's one night, and some of the guys that were there said, you can't believe the fish that are coming through that Shawnee Bridge. And my dad came in from work from Theakston's, and this was about midnight, and he got my brother and I up, and he said, boys, the sand bass are coming across that draw down there in about 3 inches of water. Let's go see if we can get some sand bass. So we got up and got some tow sacks. We were really thinking optimistically, and we got tow sacks, and we went down to that Shawnee Wash, and lo and behold, we turned the lights on the cars, and it shined across that water. The fish were just stacked on top of each other, fighting down where that water was. And we got busy, and we got 3 tow sacks full of sand bass. We took them back. We forgot that we had to clean them. When we got back, we cleaned all the bass. It was over 150 sand bass that we had, and we cleaned them, and we took them down the next day to Wilburn's frozen meat lockers. And we were able to rent us a locker and put all those good sand bass in there. And we had fish for the rest of the year, and they were always good. And what a fishing story that was. One interesting story as well to add to what we've talked about is that I had my dad, I had an uncle at that time that was a woodshop teacher in Wichita Falls. And he knew Dad was building these hulls, and he wanted to make a project out of building a Yellow Jacket boat with his own hands. So my dad got him the hull, they got him the transit, he fixed that thing up, and I think he had several of his kids at Wichita Falls that came in and helped him put that together. And his little boat was one fast little dude. He only had a 30 horsepower Johnson at that time on it, but it would still run 25 or 30 miles an hour, which was moving at that time. Uncle Jess and his boys, they would bring that boat out here to Theakston, and we had a great time skiing and learning how to ski behind another really classic wooden boat. But a beautiful boat. Enjoyed the process. We had a friend toward the early 60s, just before, I guess it was just as they were selling out the last hulls, that my dad was able to get one for one of my brother's friends, and he wanted a boat made. So we got, I guess, might have been one of the last hulls, wooden hulls that Theakston put together. He put it together, molded it out, got the transit put in, got it all fixed up for him, and we put a windshield in it, had it painted, and my friend Philip Schaffer, who is now an attorney here in town, city judge as well, who played football with my brother in particular, and went to TCU on a track scholarship with my brother. But they put that boat together, and Philip bought I think at that time, one of the biggest outboard motors. I think it was an 85 horsepower Mercury. He put that thing on that boat. He used it primarily for skiing, but it was one fast little 16-foot boat, and he raced it out there several times, and I don't think he was ever beaten with that 85 horsepower motor on that thing. But he kept it. This was in 1961 when my dad got it finished for him, and he kept it for 14 or 15 years. After law school, he was still using that thing out here in Texas, almost skiing behind it. A lot of history goes behind Theakston's, the wood hulls, the beautiful wooden boats. I have another friend that I went to high school with, Chuck Poole, who has restored a Yellow Jacket. I don't know what year, I think it's a 1956 model that he's put together, and it is a beautiful thing to look at. And I know I'm so proud that looking back over the past, that my dad had something to do with putting boats like that together. And I'm sure that the glitter in many people's eyes about having a Yellow Jacket boat, and certainly those that went by the wayside, I'm sure those individuals would love to still have their boats.